Redemption stories do exist, even when it seems the band has sunk to their lowest points. Welcome to Everyone Does Music, where today we're taking a look at the 7th studio album from British rock band Alexandria called See What's on the Inside. The band has previously made their mark on the music scene with such heavy-hitting albums off their former label Sumerian Records, such as Stand Up and Scream, Reckless and Relentless, and others. But this is actually their first release on their new label, Better Noise Music. This is a move that shocked a lot of people, but also to a lot of people was a very welcome evolutionary step, especially when you consider what trajectory their music has taken over the years. The self-titled album was more of a deviation from their metalcore roots, leaning very much so more into the hard rock side of things. And that last release on Sumerian Records actually did see a couple brief glimpses back into what Alexandria used to be, with songs like Eve or Into the Fire. Their actual last release on Sumerian Records, Like a House on Fire, however, was very much moving away from the gradual steps towards becoming a new version of the band and just going full send all the way balls deep into this new pure radio rock, pure commercial rock image. And I'm going to be making some comparisons here and there between Like a House on Fire and this new album, See What's on the Inside. But what I can quickly sum it up right now with is basically saying the album fucking sucked. Most importantly, we're here to talk about this new album, so let's get rid of this prelude, get into things truly and legitimately. Ever since the release of their 2013 album, From Death to Destiny, fans and critics alike have cited Alexandria as slowly turning their attention away from the intense, hardcore, brutal screams and breakdowns of their early years, and very slowly, again, gradually moving towards a more mainstream acceptable sound. Of course, From Death to Destiny wasn't a complete glimpse into that future. We still had some very powerful tracks, like we had the original mix of The Death of Me, we had Poison, and along with other tracks. But overall, like I said, fans and critics could very much see that there is a gradual turning of the band's faces away from pure into more like a hey type thing, if that makes any type of sense. People have jumped off of the hype train for Alexandria, jumped back on, and jumped back off again many times over the band's history. We saw the departure of Danny Worsnop, the introduction of Dennis, and then the departure of Dennis and reintroduction of Danny Worsnop, and what was kind of a very tumultuous, I think I pronounced that correctly, few years towards, I think that was 2016, 2017. Pretty much up until, pretty much between the years of 2016, during the release and post-release of The Black, the album with Dennis on it, up until the actual full release of Like a House on Fire, it was a constant period of the band transforming, re-identifying themselves and finding this new identity, and really bursting out into the world with it. And that's where Like a House on Fire came in. It was very, I was going to say miffy. Gone were any even hints, for the most part, that Alexandria was the same band that wrote such absolute swarms, such as Morte Adabo, Reckless and Relentless, and similar tracks. The only slight indication towards their legacy and their past was found in brief moments like I guess you could technically call it breakdown, but probably more of a bridge in songs like Down to Hell off of Like a House on Fire. But for the most part, this was Alexandria fully signing the contract and signing themselves over to this new sound. Which meant for the first time, fully for the first time, their entire fan base, as opposed to the split that happened with From Death to Destiny, the controversy wasn't about the lyrical content or the things they were saying on stage in between songs. It was about what the songs now sounded like. I'll admit, I'm very harsh on Like a House on Fire, and I'm spending a good majority of this review leading up to things with talking about Like a House on Fire, and I promise one day I'm going to actually go into a full critical dive and review into that album. I feel like with this album and what I'm going to be talking about later on within this review, this prelude and this lead up is really necessary. With that being said, it's not impossible for a band to switch to a more radio friendly mainstream sound, and they don't have to sound bad. You have bands they're always technically radio friendly, but Linkin Park, for example, from The Hunting Party to One More Light was a very definite shift. The Hunting Party was probably their most, I guess you could say, diverse album in a way, ever since earlier things like Minutes to Midnight or Hybrid Theory. Then you also had bands like Papa Roach, who, with albums like Metamorphosis and kind of Crooked Teeth, you kind of saw them take some new experimentation, and now they're going full experimental and doing things way differently with this new album. I'm actually really excited for that one as well. But it's not impossible for a band to go into a new radio-friendly direction and sound good doing it. And that's what the picture See What's on the Inside tries to paint here. Initially, I'll admit, I was very skeptical to listen to and especially review this album because, like I said, Like a House on Fire was essentially an absolute miss for me. There was 2 songs off of it that I even enjoyed. I go back to them sometimes, but I almost lost faith in the band. But then I sat back, I really thought for a second, I was like, you know what, at the end of the day, Alexandria, they have at least a couple songs on every album that I can fuck with, that I can enjoy. And that was, again, the case with Like a House on Fire. So I figured, give the new album a full listen, at least give it a shot. It's Alexandria. Maybe they can find that old fire and flame inside of them and really reignite it. And honestly, I was really surprised with what Danny Worsnop, Ben, Cameron, and the rest of the band members did here. See What's on the Inside is a genuine, vast improvement from Like a House on Fire, and arguably this is a better attempt at this new Asking Alexandria formula than what Self-Titled was back in 2017. This is an example of a band that once induced mosh pits, broken glass, and bruised bodies at no barricade shows, settling back, setting the screams aside, and reserving for a more subdued sound that conveys the same powerful emotion as they've done so many times before. From the get-go, you're greeted by essentially a 2-part introduction. One instrumental bit called Intro, which leads into the first actual song of the album called Alone Again. But I'm just going to call it both of these songs one intro, just for the sake of, like, it's one of those things where it leads into it and does a very flawless transition. So for my ease and for the script's ease, I'm going to be calling it just the intro. You get this very atmospheric guitar. It gives off this feeling of grandeur that bands have really been doubling down on in the past couple years. It seems like every metalcore band, rock band, metal band in general, they're really looking at their sound and how they present their albums and their music sonically and thinking, okay, we need to be big, we need to be arena ready. And that's what Asking Alexandria does straight off the bat here with the guitars, the way everything slowly falls into place here. As soon as the lyrics hit, it's both brooding and optimistic at the same time. Lead singer Worsnop is yelling out among all the noise things like, take me home, bring me home, I think it's time to be alone again. This sort of seemingly half and half positive negative thing is something that Asking Alexandria explores a lot throughout their discography, but puts more work into that sort of idea during this album. I think what a really interesting element about a band is how a certain couple members, or perhaps the whole band, preferably the whole band, complements and builds off of one another. And I think Ben Bruce and Danny Worsnop always have worked both for each other and against each other in one way or another. In this album, this song too really shows them, these two, building off of each other's deliveries. The way these two really work together throughout the course of this album, at least, is essentially trading back and forth who takes the lead on a song. Is it Ben pushing things along with his riffs and almost solos, or is it Danny Worsnop really taking a hold of things and projecting everything forward with his hurricane intensity vocals? On Alone Again, it's very much a case of the singing taking center stage. Keeping in track list order here, faded out, sees this dynamic switched around. This time it's Ben leading the charge throughout this track, leading the whole band, not just Danny, but the whole band with his parts. I really especially enjoy this kind of come and go guitar riff that transitions the verses and from the chorus to the verses. Where it's hard to explain without actually being able to play a guitar, but it's just kind of like a like that kind of thing, like it's sort of like pushing you, pulling you, pushing you, pulling you, that kind of thing. Not every song has something to write about, but when it comes to standout performances, this is one I really like to pick out. I really like to go back to replay the song, really let it sink in. This is an example of over a decade into the band's career that they still have this ability to play off of each other's strengths, to have one member of the band lead the rest in example and just overall pacing. You've seen the drummer lead certain songs, like I think songs like I previously mentioned Morte Dabo. That song to me is very much driven by the drums. Bass is kind of harder to put out, but the Black had a few bass-driven songs that I really enjoyed. But what I'm basically getting across here is that while it's mostly Ben Bruce and Daniel Worsnop leading things in terms of like one member pushing the song forward, it can happen with any member. Also, a quick highlight of this song, when Danny goes off on a semi-breakdown-esque vocal delivery towards the end of the song. Like, I'm talking like, it's almost reminiscent of something like From Death to Destiny, where he's not quite screaming, but he's definitely yelling. He's projecting his voice in a louder form. He's really showing emotion, this emotion being anger, with the song. There was something that did stick with me after a few listens, and it's a very unfortunate similarity to Like a House on Fire that I was really hoping this album wouldn't have, but it did have. Not quite as strong as Like a House on Fire did, but there is a shared quality and a shared issue that this album has. The band put out a very anthemic album here. A lot of these songs, they're arena ready, they're venue ready, they're ready to be yelled out to the audience and have them yelled back. But when you focus an album on having these sort of like big moment songs, these songs that feel larger than life, you can run into this issue where the songs start to sound very similar, very copy and paste. Good examples of this is bands like Imagine Dragons having a lot of similar songs. Under Oath for a few albums in a row kind of had the same thing going on. Like House on Fire had like 5 or 6 songs right slap in the middle that were just the same thing over and over again. It's not that many. This time it's more scattered throughout. But moving away from a fan's perspective, where a fan's perspective, I'm listening to this casually, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is good. Nice little car ride music. Looking at it from a critic's perspective, it's like, oh, I just heard this not that long ago at all. For the few of the songs here on the album, namely Never Gonna Learn, Erase It, You've Made It This Far, and Misery Loves Company, where you're basically getting the same thing with different words given to you, which is something that a lot of albums this year have really done. I don't know if it's just me noticing it more as opposed to when I used to do reviews and when I normally listen to music, but I've seen a lot of bands and a lot of releases having the same issue. There's nothing wrong with the band producing a song that has a happy ending, a song that's about overcoming adversity, triumphing over yourself, over your demons, over the hardships you've faced. And I got a little flack for this when I did my review for Escape the Fate's Chemical Warfare album. So how I found out after the review of that, because I did very little research, admittedly, about that album. I found out that the album was basically a comeback story for Craig Mabbitt, and how the album's bulk of the content was basically him overcoming his own demons, his own issues. Asking Alexandria here, it doesn't have as much of a redeeming quality as Escape the Fates did, because we heard these same things back on Like a House on Fire. We heard Danny saying, "I'm me, I'm back, you can't change me," over and over on the last album, and even partially on their self-titled album back in 2017. And quite honestly, just to wrap that up, I'm just getting sick of it almost. Like, you can only have the same story being told so many times before. As a listener, I just sit there and go, wow, okay. I can skip over these. I can get to the last real fucking standout song, which we're going to talk about. The last real great song on the album that I think is really worth talking about is Fame. We're moving on from self-reflection and finding yourself to something new within this pack of songs. This track is just the band letting loose, talking shit about, well, fame, talking about how, oh, you want to get big? You want to fuck? You want drugs? Here you go, have at it, take it from me. It's the 5 guys just letting loose, having a good time. It's what they originally wanted to accomplish with albums like Stand Up and Scream. It's saying fuck it. It's letting loose. It's the closest thing we're ever going to get to a song that sounds like it could belong in the band's first 2 or 3 albums. Technically, first 3 or 4 if you count Irony of Your Perfection. I always forget that that's a studio album, as much as the band wants to forget it. I think it's a decent album, but that's not what we're worried about today. All in all, I think it's a very sad reality we're having to face here. The Asking Alexandria has joined the ranks of bands such as Atreyu, where the former image they got big for and saw their first glimpses of fame for has been mostly discarded. We're not seeing it again. We're not going to see Danny Worsnop screaming at the top of his lungs, being an absolute animal on stage anymore, which is probably good considering when he was an animal on stage, he was drinking and doing drugs. But putting that aside, we're not going to see the old AA back. While it's not as horrible a moment as their last album was, this one actually sees them relying more on the good aspects of what made them want to switch to this type of sound, leaning more towards their influences such as AC/DC and Led Zeppelin, as opposed to the last couple albums before this, kind of sounded like the band just wanted to produce what everybody else was producing. This is a positive turn, a positive change. It's still not fantastic. You're still having a lot of drag down. Given the nature of their discography and the nature of the album that came out before this, there's bound to be comparisons from a casual or critical perspective. And that, along with the quick little slew of scattered drags found throughout the album, it produces an anchor for the album, kind of marooning it in a certain part of the shore, not really getting to the center of the harbor, if that makes sense. It's a much more positive venture than bands like Trivium. I really don't want to review that new Trivium album, but you gotta. Say goodbye to your Cowboy Kings. Now we got the dads, I guess. I had a better illusion in my head, but I lost it. All in all, See What's on the Inside by Asking Alexandria gets a 6.8 out of 10. And that's the reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the support you guys give me, whether it's one video, a couple videos, or if you're some kind of psychopath who watches a lot of my videos. What are you doing to yourself? But thank you for any support you give. If you could leave a like or a comment, possibly both, I would really appreciate that. New subscribers, I'm just gonna be honest with you, build motivation for me to create content. It's the serotonin that the numbers give me. And if you guys want to talk more about how I did this review, or you just want to discuss the album, or just discuss how your day is going down in the comment section, hit me up. Let's talk about things. How was your day? All in all, I hope you stay hydrated, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. See you next time.